Welcome in everyone to a special episode of American Joyride. I am joined today by repeat guest Dave Nielsen. I often don't have repeat guests. You really got to clear a high bar to get the invite to come back. Dave cleared that bar with no issues whatsoever. That interview was a little more than a year ago, I believe. And Dave, I want to ask you, in the year since that interview went up, kind of after people got to hear your story, what were your thoughts of getting to share that story with the audience, and what feedback did you receive?
Hey, David, it was that kind of kicked off everything that I have been going on. It seems like a month and it seems like 5 years, but I had taken 10 years since retirement, no social media. And then I thought about all this stuff and sort of worked up and into it, getting on social media, talking about stories for what I do now, which is just volunteer work, coaching football and church stuff. So when I made that decision, we just linked up almost at the beginning, and really that talking to you, those interviews, you were sending me like YouTube shorts. I didn't even know how to navigate. I'm still learning, but I would see those shorts and, I'm like, wow, people want to see this. Obviously they do, because there was lots of views, but that's what got me talking to these Aussies who I did Zero Limits with this, they were all like, hey, I saw you with David Hookstead, and would you like to talk? And I'm like, okay. And the Aussies, for some reason, were just super cathartic for me, because they're like talking about childhood stuff. Not that I want to do that, but when it gets up and out, you just get a little better. So, man, when it started with you, I also was contacted by, it was like 24, 36-hour period. A few months after that, everybody from the unit that ever, was like, hey man, we need to get on signal. Like, okay, like they know where I am. I know where they are. It's just, I want some time away. But so I did. And so I linked up with all those guys, and everything was great. There was just one dude out of from the time before I was in, there was just like one bad comment. And of course, I focus on that. He was like, this dude sure, looks like a badass. Is he legit? And I just happened to be scrolling through, and I pulled it up, and it was me on YouTube. I'm like, oh man, because that's like my fear is that. But before we talked, I wanted to face that fear. That's my thing, face the tank. So I did. And like, as I'm looking at it, three guys were like, yeah, he's legit. Totally, like, let it go. Kind of stood up for me. So that was cool, really helpful. And, talked to a bunch of guys that I hadn't talked to in a lot of years. So yeah, man, I appreciate that. It got it going. And I remember you saying we'll talk a year from now, maybe. So here we are.
And here we are. And I'm glad to hear that. And I told you just before we started filming, some of those video clips are some of the most viewed we've ever done. And I think it's because you were just honest with yourself. You were honest with the audience. You didn't attempt to put a spin on it. You just told things as you remembered them. And that type of authenticity in this day and age is about as rare as a unicorn sighting. So thank you very much for that first interview. We're going to even do something extra special today. And I want to start today. In our first interview, we talked your Army Ranger roots. What we didn't talk, and what I didn't know until we had a conversation a few weeks back, is you were, I don't know, involved in the direct raid or in the aftermath of the raid of Jessica Lynch. And can you explain who Jessica Lynch was and your role as a ranger and everything that happened there?
Yeah. So I was a ranger. I was in snipers. So I had just come back in the Army. That was in March of 2003. I came back in like January 2002. So I had been there for a little bit. I was a sniper attached to B Company 175, 1st Ranger Battalion. So that's where I was back in the 80s for Panama and Desert Storm. Bravo Company, the 75th Rangers. So I had a 10-year break in service, and then I was back in. So I was there I was a spotter, my sniper, 2-man team. And we were on that raid, and it was, just, we hadn't seen much at that point. So we wanted it to be what we thought it was going to be. It wasn't. It was this whole other damn thing that we'll get into. But yeah, so we just there was SEAL Team 6. There was it was mostly a Ranger thing, 1st and 2nd Bat. you know. And what really sparked me recently was that Pat Tillman documentary, him talking about being on it and just sitting there, waiting for hours and hours and watching A10s do their thing. And he thought they were just having fun. And it's like, he didn't know. I know the look, I know the tone as a Ranger, E3, E4, whatever. When you're just sitting there on the target for 6 or 7 hours, wondering what in the hell is going on. And I'm like, man, he didn't know that we were digging up bodies. So, yeah, Jessica Lynch was a private in the Army, and she was in, I don't know, some, unit, and they were ambushed. I don't know all the specifics, but so she was taken hostage for a few weeks. And that was, the big thing at the beginning of the war. So um, eventually we ended up going to get her. We knew everybody else was killed. We didn't know. Well, that was just like in the background. I don't know why that wasn't talked about more, because we're all, never leave a fallen comrade, never leave anybody behind. It's like, I just don't remember the plan for that. So yes, it was hyped. Yes, it was spun. Okay. Who freaking cares at this point? What I care about is my boys, the guys that were there, BCO 175 digging up bodies, the mortar privates, these kids that as I'm back in the Army now, I'm in my 30s. So I'm, I just want to help these young kids get through this experience and have fun with them, like make friends. They're just good kids. So they're the ones there. I wasn't digging up bodies, but the raid's done. We're looking for sniper targets. There's nothing. They're not dumb. They know when to fight and when not to. The Iraqis, the whoever, Al Qaeda. So, but the Marines were just like, they had just gotten their asses handed to them and worn out. I'm not saying they got beat. I'm just saying you've been put in a typical Marine situation where it was like, they had just had a rough time. So they were like, oh, be careful in Nasiriyah and all that. So we thought there was potential for a good fight. There wasn't, but so, and I have journal entries, but they don't talk about, it was three. So I need to say why this matters for me. Like, if something, something's in me burning in my soul, like it needs to come out, things come out. And what it boils down to, I'll just get right to it, is hypocrisy that just can't coexist with the true warrior spirit. And I was watching an interview with Mike Tyson. I love Mike Tyson. And he nailed it. There's these guys lining up, like men, lining up to ask him questions on this interview. And one of them brings up Customato. And he's like, man, you got me crying. Why you got to ask that? And then but he stays with it, right? We get older. Mike's in his 50s or 60s. I'm in my 50s. But somebody asks you, like, why, what would you say to cussing? Why? And then, and he just goes, because I'm a savage, right? He says that. And that's the thing that needs to get worked out. And it's like, this dude in me, in Mike Tyson, in maybe all of us, I don't know, but it's different in all of us. But if we don't address this, this savage warrior in the right way, we'll have somebody dying at the clip of almost one every hour, like we got here in the US, or we'll have transformation and stories being told in that. So this is why this one in particular, there's lots more, but in particular just gets me, is because of what happened on the objective and afterwards. And it's been over 20 years now. And it's still like, just not a big deal they still want to spin it politically. And it's like, let's respect these 9 soldiers who gave their life.
So I want to back up just real briefly. So you're doing Overwatch when they're digging up the bodies, which I first learned that bodies were dug up. I never knew that until I interviewed a guy named Mike Burke, who was also there in a Ranger element. And I thought that was fascinating. But before that, when the raid goes down, are you in a blocking position? Because it was SEAL Team 6 that got in the hospital, right?
Yeah. Yeah. We were like trying to hitch a ride on their pander. They weren't too nice at that point. And I get it. You know, we're young Rangers. I would probably be the same way. But yeah, they're the ones that went in and um, you know, brought her out. But we knew where she was. We had an informant. So that was the easy part. Um, yeah, I was on a building, a rooftop. We just drove right in, crashed the gate, like, you know, boom, spread out. It was just a land on the X. There was a helo element, I think second Ranger, and we just drove in. I was on a friggin' 5 ton. We put sandbags on the all around, and we just busted into our corner, fired a couple shots. You know, we saw what we thought was somebody in the window, so it doesn't even matter, irrelevant. But so we were on this rooftop right next to the base of the hospital where the bodies were. So I sent you that thing I wrote, and you know, it's the rescue, if you want to call it that. That was done 45 minutes. That's all done, and then we're digging up bodies. And even before that, like before we went, there's 3 days of um. So I don't want to knock leadership too bad. I'm not saying I could do it better, but it was always like this in the Rangers, and it was never like this in Delta. Like, we're gonna sit out in the hot freaking sun. We literally went, hurry up, 3 days before, flew to this hangar with no roof. And so we're in this hangar in the sun in March in Iraq, just getting crushed like a freaking piece of dry fruit. Then I get, migraine, and people are getting sick. Oh, and by the way, we're wearing our chem suits. We are, but the commander walks by wearing Ranger panties, as we call them, PT shorts, and a t-shirt. And that's when my freaking lid pops, man. Like, I just can't abide in a situation like that. So that's when the chirping starts, and you know, plan, hut, hut, hut. 3 days later, we're there, and we're doing that, and then it's time to dig bodies, and it gets real really quick. It's like a gunfight. It's like, okay, I'll forget about all the chirping and chatter, and you focus. So when it was like, hey, we found the bodies, and they're only buried a couple feet down, and we start digging, and then we smell the smell um, that to this day I can't even get close to. But um, and then you hear your buddies throwing up, and we're out of water. My e-tools broke. People are bringing e-tools, bringing water. My teammate is going down and helping. And so we're watching it all, and you want to help, but you got to stay up there and do your job, full security. Um, and then, there's radio calls. So you're hearing the radio the whole time. And you're working, you're doing your job, but you're always hearing this traffic. And Fader, I mean, I wrote about him. So like, I use people's names when they're awesome. If they're not awesome, I just leave the name out. They know who they are. Fader was just the man. Like, he just, staff sergeant standing up to a freaking colonel. Hey, you gonna hurry up? You gotta hurry up there. We got to get out of here. All right, sir. Yeah, we're trying. Guys are throwing up. We're having to rotate out. It's really the bodies are coming apart. Um, it took hours and hours, and e-tools were breaking. Guys were digging with their hands. Um, you know, just we talked later and on the way home, and when we got home, eyes were just really, really hard to see stuff. They were buried for 3 weeks in the desert, and we knew with the creed we needed to recover those bodies. So we did, but at one point it was just this, we got to finish up. What's taking so long? And finally Fader was like, hey, sir, would you please shut the fuck up? We are trying so hard. This is the worst thing we've ever done and probably will ever have to do. Please kindly turn your radio off, or come and help. And then it was quiet. And eventually we finished and we're rolling out. It was the sun was coming up at that point. So I just want to, I always want to be where I'm at, right? Feel what I'm feeling. So I get a little shaky talking about this still because and I just want to say that, like, if anybody notices that, yeah, hell yeah, I'm freaking worked up about this. So we're driving home. The sun's coming up, 9, 10 in the morning, and we'd been up. We hadn't slept. If you do, it's just a little bit, but so we've got these bodies on the flatbed that I came in on now, we've got in body bags and we're tired. And so the mortar guys driving this flatbed 5-ton go off the road and the body bags roll off. And it's like, oh my God, talk about, Murphy. So we picked him up again, loaded him up again. And we finally get back to wherever we got back to. That's where my memory just goes out. And we got help unloading, but people just took their clothes off, stripped them and burned them. And, I just don't remember a few days after that, kind of like Pepper, I just zoned out once it was done. But obviously the hypocrisy of the, we're wearing charcoal freaking suits in 118 degrees and your boss comes by, you're wearing shorts. That ain't gonna work.
That story is crazy for many reasons.
Yeah.
It's again, I almost feel embarrassed to admit it. I'm 32 years old, and I had no idea that bodies were dug up at all. And I consider myself a bit of a history buff, and I can't imagine just the emotional drain that must take on a guy. How many days would you say it took, maybe, for, I don't know if morale is the right word, but how long did it take for people to kind of, okay, now we're on to the next thing. We can't dwell. We're in an active war. What was that transition like?
Good question. It was longer than normal, like probably longer than when one of your guys dies. That's a day or two, and then it's back to work. I don't remember, but I know it was significant because of, as much as the horror of digging up bodies, the hypocrisy because of that. It's like, man, nobody's saying it, but like I can look back now and know that what's going on in our spirit is like just this impossibility of, hypocrisy and integrity. They're not what's going to win. So eventually we got back to work, but I don't remember much.
I do want to ask you one final thing on the Jessica Lynch thing. When that happened, like I said, I was a little kid when that happened, but I remember it on the news. In the initial, the news told these stories of, this gun battle in the hospital, and they were throwing grenades, and there was SEAL Team 6. And obviously now we know none of that happened. When you were over there, were you guys seeing what was being told to the American public about the raid, or did you have no idea of what was being sent back to the country?
We knew, I mean, we had news on, so it was kind of the thing, like you go out and do your work at night, you come home and you're eating breakfast and you watch yourself on the news, like, oh, there's Saddam Hussein, stuff like that. So yeah, we knew, but yeah, we didn't watch, we watched Fox, of course, but we knew, but I didn't know how stupidly reported it was until 10 years ago when I looked into it again.
It is crazy. And Jessica Lynch, to her credit, I think you and I talked about this briefly the first time we interviewed. There's some people who might greatly exaggerate or outright lie. Jessica Lynch, to her credit, when she was interviewed, finally said, "I didn't do any of the things that they're claiming I did. I had some teammates who fought to the bitter end. I certainly wasn't one of them." And I think she deserves to be applauded for that, because
Absolutely.
she easily could have just have gone along with the stories that were being told about her, but she had more dignity and integrity than that. And
Right.
and so thank you very much for touching on the Jessica Lynch raid. Now you're talking about there kind of the emotions, like that was very hard. when you're now in the unit, or when you're a dog handler before you're an operator, and you have Pepper's death, and you're seeing guys die. I believe you said, correct me if I'm wrong, at one point your team had a 50% casualty rate. You got their names on the board.
Yeah.
What does that do for your emotions? Does it make you pissed off? Does hatred start to build? How do you start viewing the enemy when you're in the violence is starting to reach this level?
It almost gets to this clean sort of thing. Now you're shut down, and I was warned by Vietnam Ranger friends, don't dehumanize your enemy, keep your heart and this and that. But for me, after Pepper, I shut down. That was the last time I just screamed, punched the ground, and that was the last time I felt. And then that's kind of an okay place to be. You can do a lot of work, and I did, and like that's when I just became robot Terminator Dave. At the cost of divorces and friendships, and my brother dies and I don't feel a thing. So that's the cost, and you hear it, but living it is different. um you know it's it's been 20 years, and I still get shook up, or emotional. I get physically reaction happens when I talk about this stuff, because it's a process to resolve it. It really is.
When Pepper dies, and for those of you who are unaware, you can watch the first interview where we really dive deep into Pepper's story. Dave's combat dog Pepper was killed on a raid around the time they're hunting Zarqawi, correct?
That's right. Yeah.
When that happens, we don't need to reopen that whole thing yet again. When you notice that you're the Terminator now, you've gone clean, you've gone emotionless. Did anyone ever pull you aside and say, "Hey, are you good?" Like, or it's like you're on autopilot now. Just he's doing what he's doing.
So it was such a unique time for me and my peers, the place we were at. I'm talking like the place in the team, and we call it the heavy lifting years, like '03 to '09, 2010, just nonstop, you know, several times a night going out. So we didn't know back then, I don't think. And you saw other guys, and you heard kind of stories of, whoa, he's like, look at him. I knew that something was different in me when, um, like I said, I like to breach. So I'm the team breacher, not a heavy breach, just a door breach. Like that's my thing. I want to bust the main door so I can be the first one in. Um, when I saw like my friends look at me in a different way, like a different face, that's when I knew I was changing to what I wanted to be. I wanted to be Terminator. And so I knew I had gotten there. And then people knew me that hadn't known me before, and it felt good, right? That's what I wanted. That's my goal. So I got there. Um, then what? So, but yeah, I could see it on their faces, but nobody said anything. I did stay close with our unit psychiatrist. The unit was good, really good with um, being honest. They were like, "Hey, this is new territory. We don't, at the point when we're engaged in a war longer than World War II. No, it's not World War II. Like we wanted. We wanted to scale a cliff and fight. That's not what we got. We got people that hide among, the civilians, and we got to weed them out. And we'll talk about that later. But we didn't get that. So um, I'm losing track. I'm at that
Yeah,
point where I'm
no, no,
drifting.
yeah, yeah, no worries. I understand the point you're making totally in World War II, and I didn't even have this question on the list, but I think it's a perfect question given the context you just brought up.
Oh yeah.
in in World War II, you can look across a field and there's a bunch of Germans in German uniforms with an artillery battery or something, or there's a bunch of Japanese soldiers doing whatever they're doing. It's pretty clear where it's us, it's them. You just said they're hiding across the civilian population. When it comes to figuring out good guy, bad guy, I'm just gonna give an example that I think is broad. If you see a guy walking towards your position in the street, You don't see a weapon. He's got heavy clothes on, could have a bomb, could have an AK slung under there. What do you do? Because it's not like he's wearing a uniform. He hasn't presented a weapon yet. Do you let him get close and then it's too late? I mean, how do you handle a situation like that?
We have interpreters. We're very, careful and precise. Like, it's a high level operator position because of our ability to get through this training, which takes longer than to train a jet fighter. Like, it's a process, and a lot of people get cut and don't make it. And it's because we can go in there and, shoot somebody. The TV show and movies where they got somebody like this and they're holding, it's like, just shoot him in the head. It's so easy. I mean, that's all we do all day. So it's like, uh, that's the thing. But, you know, sometimes say like after Jessica Lynch or after Pepper or, three guys die in one night, there'd always be somebody like, man, isn't it? In World War II, they had to blah, blah, blah. And it's like, you think that, and I believe that, and I bought that for so long, but it doesn't help. It doesn't fix me right now. And so you start to think and use your mind because you do get paid to think. And you see that, like, wait a minute, everything is different. Let's apply some logic here and see. You can see guys changing. I'm changing. I don't want to talk to home anymore. Um, so, and then we get home and there's more suicides than World War II. So something is clearly wrong. But the unit was good. And there was gosh, I was just talking to somebody the other day about this. Our head psych, she's awesome, a colonel. And I'm talking to her because my ex-wife, my daughter's mother's in there chewing her out because I'm not doing what she thinks I should be doing. It's ridiculous. So she helped me get through that divorce. But I also, she had been going to all these funerals, and I looked at her and I was like, ma'am, who do you talk to? Like, and she got this like deep look and tear in her eye, like the thousand-yard stare. And I was like, phew, and left it there. But, it affects everybody.
Well, that woman is nothing short of a hero,
Oh my
with
gosh. Yeah.
without a doubt. And I can see it in your face, the way you feel about this psychiatrist. And that is number one, it's great to hear that they have someone like that that you can talk to. And second, God bless whoever this unnamed woman is. I can't imagine the weight that she must carry on her shoulders. And that's a good example of people that, they don't get the glory. No one sees them on TV. They're not making movies about them, but that person's saving lives. And that
Amen.
person is making an unbelievably huge impact. So good for her. And I thank you for sharing that woman's story. That is incredible. On the op tempo, like we've talked about, you said the heavy lifting years, 03, 09. When the hunt for Zarqawi is on, who frankly might be the biggest scumbag the world's ever. Everyone talks about Bin Laden. No one really talks about Zarqawi because people my age don't even know he really existed. When they were hunting him before they got him, what was the tempo like? I mean, was it every day you're doing a hit? Is it once a week you're doing a hit? How fast are you guys going when you're in the hunt for him?
So yeah, it sort of ebbs and flows. And when that started, I think I was coming through some sort of training, but it was so big that it was talked about, back home. And then it got to where after we got, Hussein and everybody one after another, it wasn't such a big deal, but it was like talked about, intel briefs when you were back, because you rotate a few months. And usually, you didn't know so much what was going on over there. Not guys at my level, enlisted, middle of the team leaders and up, they would know the real stuff. But it was big because we were talking about it at home. And this guy, he didn't. How did Saddam Hussein, Saddam Hussein didn't die. He should have, he didn't fight. Bin Laden didn't fight, right? Zarqawi did. I mean, he didn't. And he's also the one cutting heads off and then playing the audio and the video. So yeah, he was just straight up evil. I mean, and I wasn't there for him. That was a different group of guys. My friends got him. They got him good. Yeah. Um, but the tempo was, so when you get closer and closer and, you're building up to him. And by the way, they may not fight like Germans or Japanese, but the Middle Easterners have street craft skills way beyond ours, because that's how they grow up, what they know, what they do. That's their culture. They can blend and mix and spread intel and stay hidden. They're just superior to us in that. So it's a challenge. As we get closer to somebody like Zarqawi, it gets, you can tell. And then you're out from, 9 o'clock at night till sometimes noon the next day. If you're really, you'll stay out in daylight if you have to, but you're trying to get home at night. But it's 2, 3, 4, 5 hits a night, because one leads to another, and that's the process. That's how it works.
The follow on hits. I'm really fascinated that you brought up kind of their ability to blend in. I interviewed a CIA agent on the very topic, and he said Zarqawi's tradecraft and ability to avoid detection was the best that they had ever dealt with. He said it was incredible, the tradecraft, this guy, not using certain phones, always being on the move, his appearance. And that, I think some Americans look at terrorists and like they're a bunch of dumb, sand dwelling morons. That's not true.
Yeah.
It's just not true.
Yeah.
So when you are doing, like you said, you got a follow on hit that might lead to another follow on hit. I mean, how do you avoid getting burnt out? That's an incredible amount of time and energy.
Yeah. Well, I think that, we figured out, because the rest of the Army, they're doing a year over there, and they're not going out every night. So I think it was just, hey, somebody's idea, like, let's try 90 days. And it seemed to work. I call it the road march theory. If you do a 6 mile or a 20-mile road march, the last mile is going to hurt the same in life. The last part, finishing, is difficult. So, one time we did 5 months, so we did a surge. It's just always more difficult at the end, no matter how long it is, because you're getting ready to be done. So, like sports, I mean, that's where the mental toughness comes in. You got to finish. And that's that's a whole nother area of scholars and warriors not being separated, because the quote, "We'll have our thinking done by cowards and our fighting by fools." If we divide our scholars and warriors, I'm fighting that fight at church right now with a bunch of eggheads, and I have to remind them. But yeah.
I listened to your interview with Jeff Teagues. Jeff has been on this show, fascinating guy, former Delta Force officer, just really a fascinating dude all the way around. In that interview, you said something that I kind of latched onto and I thought was really captivating and intriguing. You mentioned the divorce you were going through and how you wanted to be in the front of the line going into targets, knowing that death could be waiting on the other side of that door. And I have never heard someone say it in that way before. Was it because you were going through a divorce and you were upset? You're like, F it, just put me in the front of the line. I don't care what happens. Or was it, I just want to get in on the action. I want to be guaranteed to be the first guy in. Please tell me how that went down.
Well, Jeff and I used to drive into work together. We lived next to each other, and we went through OTC together. So, we just talked half an hour each way, an hour a day. We told stories. But I'll say it like this: I wasn't going through a divorce. I was going through a marriage, my second marriage, and did not want to be divorced twice. And this marriage lasted 10 years only because I was gone 7 months average every year. So it was so bad. And I need to say, I talk about this. I don't like talking about this. I do it because I think it serves a purpose. It, I know it does, because I've had so many people since we first talked on Instagram say, "Hey man, I had put all my beliefs away and looking for faith in things, I had just forgotten that, but hearing the way you do it." So it's really, I have succeeded in God's, I know I have on my mission. So this is why I talk about it. But I was miserable to a point that I've never been before and hope I never am again. I got on my knees and I prayed. My wife at the time was blaming me for her not being able to get pregnant. We'd tried for 7 years. This eventually ended up, being my daughter's mother, she's 18 now, but I just couldn't take it anymore. I'm deploying. And so I got on my knees and I prayed that she would either get pregnant and we would have a baby, or I would die in war. And I knew that was extreme. I'll never forget, when you're at that place, it's real. And I didn't know at the time that so many biblical heroes, Jonah, Moses, Elijah had prayed for death. It's a pretty normal thing. Well, to me it is. But um and then she didn't get pregnant, so I'm like, okay, I'm gonna die. Like I just wanted to die. I was that miserable um in my marriage. I'm sober, but still struggling with that. So I tried to die. I did. I mean, I um to the point where it's like, man, you guys suck. There's bullets hitting all around me, and I'm just people are starting to notice, and then I'm exposing myself. Um, so I didn't want it to be that, like, oh, he did that on purpose. So, but I was that miserable, and I just started to see that, I felt like God was just kind of like shaking his head, like, come on, dude, you see, I'll let you know when it's time. So, um, but that got me to a point where going through that, dozens, 100 times, I just wasn't scared anymore. So even when things got a little better and I had my daughter, well, after Pepper died, I shut down emotionally. So um, at that point, I just didn't care. I also, man, I'll say this. Here's the thing I haven't said before, and it's hard to say. I hated the Army. I hated deploying. I hated training. I loved the sense of accomplishment. I loved that I was able to make it to the Rangers and then to Delta and then succeed for 10 years. But like, just like, I don't do that now. I've got, you know, a few guns that I'm going to give to my kids. I don't shoot. I can't shoot, man. My hand shakes like, um, so like, I loved, I loved the, you know, video to exfil. I did love that, but just everything else sucked. But I mean, come on, you don't get to choose your wars. You don't get to choose um, how everything's going to go down. But yeah, so I was just miserable, you know. But
Do,
but I felt
do,
like I was in the right place.
do you look back at that time now? That's you're a long time removed from it. Do you think to yourself, like, it's crazy I didn't get killed? Like, it's a miracle I didn't get shot.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's to the point where it's okay, God, I see. Yeah, I know. Yeah, I tried so hard. Um, then my brother commits suicide in 2012. I was about done by then, but Benghazi went down. A couple, my friends were there and helped, you know, get Ambassador Stevens' body back. I asked people, like, how do you think that happened? They didn't give him back. My buddies went and negotiated in Arabic to get Ambassador Stevens' body back. Like, there's so much things that people don't know that, I mean, and it's Jessica Lynch 20 years ago, Ambassador Stevens 12 years ago. It's okay to talk about. We're not, there's no big secrets. It's just, um,
But can I stop you right there because you brought it up? I have, well, I'm sure that there is a serious movement, and I think it was put in to upgrade one of the two Delta guys who was there to upgrade his distinguished service. It's called the Distinguished Service Cross, right?
yeah,
They
DSC.
they put it in for an upgrade to a Medal of Honor. I don't know if that'll happen. But it is. I'm not going to say I know both of who those two guys are. I'm not going to say either of their names. What I will say, and this is what I want your opinion on now that's been brought up, people from the CIA have made comments from the people from the CIA that were there have made comments that to me have been very disparaging about those two Delta guys that came in. Specifically about how they handled the bodies. And it's like, dude, you're getting mortared, you're getting shelled. It's time to go. Like, we're not here to dilly dally, right? You know those two guys. I don't know them at all. What do you think? Like, just they're heroes, are they not? They went into an absolute hornet's nest and did everything they could to save lives.
Yeah. There's always this friction between DOD and DOJ, I guess they are. Um, I saw a little bit of it, but what was the movie called?
13 hours.
Yeah. So I went to see that with my wife Laura, and we stand up after the movie, and it's like, oh, it was okay. I stand up and I turn around and is in the back. In the back, he just watched the movie, and he had just he was the dude there. I mean, and I just the lights came in. I saw, and he gave me this look like there's no way to explain it. But I'm like, there's 150 people here. Nobody knows that that is the dude who was just got the ambassador's body back.
Did they feel that it was accurate? Like, I guess maybe like, what did they think about the movie 13 hours?
We just know there's no expectations when these things happen. That's the documentary about Pepper was really good. Um, it didn't really do well, whatever that means, but who cares? Like, but it wasn't. There's expectations that it's going to be sensationalized, and they've gotten better, but um, it was way off. I mean, that's why he gave me that look. He was just like, "What are you going to do?" And I'm like, "Oh my god!" Like he's sitting right. That must be so weird.
Oh, I can't imagine how weird that is. But I personally think they're both heroes. I don't know how anyone.
Absolutely.
They literally left a safe area in Tripoli, I believe, and went into a situation where they were outnumbered, outgunned, had no control of anyone on the ground, got to the annex and did what they did, got the ambassador's body back. And the fact that some of the people there, in my opinion, made claims that these guys were essentially useless is absolutely insane to me. But uh,
Criminally insane. It is. And that's the essence of what I'm getting at, David, is the hypocrisy, the Ranger commander, Jessica Lynch, and then it's not talked about. That's the type of thing that cannot coexist with the warrior spirit and needs to be called out. And I'm kind of doing the same thing at a way less dangerous level by doing this. Jeff Teagues too, um, his book, Delta Force Commander, like, hey, we're going to talk about this, not to just, we're going to honor everybody, but it needs to come up and out. So yeah, same thing.
100% agree. On the breaching thing, in our last interview, you made a comment that there's no better job than being the breacher. And I would love to unpack that a little bit with you. In your opinion, well, first off, can you explain to the audience who might not have any idea what that means, what your job as a breacher is, and then why is that the absolute best job you can have?
So when you come up to a target, I mean, just think about it as breaking into a house. Um, Only you trained to do it for years and years and years professionally with a bunch of, a dozen other trained guys. So um, if they happen to leave the doors unlocked or open, which is rare, but sometimes they do, then you're in. But if not, you got to get in, and you got to get in quick. So we do it explosively often. And the breachers meet up every other night or so, and we build our bombs, just little, um won't go too much, but just small, lightweight uh uh charges that we build and that are quick, and you slap it on a door, you put a little device on it with the hair clip to set it off, and then you can do it instant, or you can do it with a few second delay, but there's just nothing for me, especially, in my state of mind where I'm just like, I don't, let's do this. Let's get the pain over with. Somebody please shoot me. I'm through that, by the way. Like, my life is so wonderful now. I have twin boys who were born 10 years to the day after the ambush in Afghanistan where I exposed myself. So I got through it. There's hope. Um, but yeah, breaching is just, you're kind of in the, so there's a team leader, and then a two, and then there's me, the breacher, and then a guy or two more. So just like dead center. I like to be in the middle of stuff. Um, and you get to blow the door in, and you have, aerial photography of your target, where you're going. You learn the area, pretty much what to expect. So you've got a couple different options if it's, you know, wood, metal door, push, pull, whatever. And you make your choice, you put your charge up, you stay, you know, and there's a big explosion, and you rush in, and it's awesome. I love it. Yeah, that was the best part of it.
I have to ask because I'm so curious. How does that affect your brain when you're that close to a concussive blast? I mean, I don't know how many times you're doing it. I assume quite often. Does that does that level of kind of bang, 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 does that do anything to your brain?
Yeah, I used to be really smart. I have a really great doctor now at the VA, and my last one just left. He was good. Dr. Capehart was awesome, but Dr. Ashuri now, he's so awesome because he's like, man, the more we research, the more we don't know. I have traumatic brain injury. I have migraine headaches that were like 3 a week. Now it's like once a month. I finally got the right medication. But yeah, it definitely mushifies the brain. One time, I, after a few rotations and training, and so training, basically the shock, it doesn't blow you like this in the movies. It, but you do feel it. It bounces off walls. So in training, it's designed to where the concussive force goes up and out, it dissipates. But over there, everything's concrete. So it's like, boom, it just radiates. Our chest plates, our ceramic plates, attenuate that. It deflects the damage, because your lungs are the first thing to go in an explosion. That's how you know how people get really hurt is lungs, collapsed lungs. So we've got ceramic plates on, so our lungs are fine, so they're not getting blown up, but you're getting your bell rung every time. Where a couple times I'm like, charge goes off, and Eric, my teammate taps me, you going? What's wrong? Like, and because I was knocked out, I'm just sitting there like, oh, and then I go. That happened a few times. So, um, yeah, they called me once because I'd had an MRI, and like, we're bringing a guy from DC, and you have MS. We're sure of it. You got all these white spots on your brain. Okay, I got MS. Go to the Mayo Clinic. Nope, you're fine. There's just nothing. So they don't know.
It's really an unknown science. Like you said, the guy said the more we study, the more we realize we don't know. I think logically speaking, your brain is not meant to be banged around a whole lot. I've been hospitalized for several head injuries
Mm.
over the years. So I mean I don't know anything compared to TBI or anything like that, but I know when I had some head injuries, it takes days to get back to where you even feel your equilibrium is normal. And mine were from playing sports. I can't imagine what it would be like because a concussive blast wave came, flying by. And then on top of it, you got the gunfire, which is just, mini blast. Um, I just had to ask because I find that all that fascinating. I kind of want to transition now to when you're facing the enemy you're facing. We talked a little bit about Sarkawi. In the interview previously, we also talked about terrorism. I hear a lot of people say that when we're fighting a uniformed army, maybe the early days against Saddam, it's just professional business. It's just they're professional soldiers. We're professional soldiers. They don't want to be there. They know they're about to get their ass kicked. There's no way around it. But now you're fighting hardcore jihadis. They'll cut heads off. They'll rape people. They will do the most horrific things a human can do to another human. When you're fighting those guys, and when I pull this trigger and I put a round through that guy's head, the world is about to become an immediate better place. What type of feeling does that build up in you?
You mean after it happens?
Yeah.
Man, it's I had no idea what to expect. It's awesome. I oh yeah, here I am, the Christology podcast, and going to seminary. well, read your Old Testament. There's war has been around the whole, all the time. Cormac McCarthy, the author, calls it the ultimate trade awaiting the ultimate practitioner. So that's where it gets real. I mean, and when you get to do that, and it took me a long time to for that to happen, for me to get my first kill in the Rangers. No, I didn't. In Panama, I did not get any kills. I didn't shoot until, just like the movies, until I got shot at and I was told to shoot back, and I did. And then we talked about it last time. I made the decision to, okay, no more of this. I'm just gonna, um, you know, do the deal. But it's incredible. Like you said, when it's one of these shitheads, you know, and we take every measure. I mean, it is the most careful thing. But, you know, there was a dude who pulled his wife up. I call this my best sniper shot. It was like 2 meters. It was right there, but it was moving. I'm moving. I'm reaching backwards, in a room. He pulls his wife up like this, and I put it about, and his brain landed in his wife's lap. And my teammate, like slow motion, he's looking at me like, how did that happen? I'm like, I don't know. It was like when you blow an egg out with a pinhole. Um, and we knew that was the dude we were looking for, right? So it's like, yep, that's him. So there's no questions, you know what I mean? And if people want to bitch, why did we kill bin Laden? Or we killed bin Laden, right? How? People shot him. Who cares who? But they found him and they just killed him. Good. So does that apply to other bad guys? You know? Yep. To me, it does. So when we find these emirs of assassinations in Baghdad, and we get him, and they give me that look, and I when and you just smile and kill the guy. It's God, there's nothing like it. It's awesome.
Was the Amir of Assassinations, was that the guy who grabbed his wife and threw her in front of him?
No, but that was the guy whose wife started screaming, like they did, and then the interpreter said, "Hey, she wants to talk to you." I'm like, "Nope." He said, "No, she wants to thank you." That was that one.
You don't have to if you don't want to, but can you get into more details about that one?
Yeah, I mean, we just that was like later on and through the years for me toward the end, but we just, Amir of Assassinations. Oh, by the way, this dude's 5'2", right? So that's a pretty short male. And we had a picture of him. I still got a picture of him. And so we busted in there and found him, and this was the funniest. He's watching The Last Samurai on a laptop. And we bust in, and he looks at me like he's mad at me. Like, what are you doing here in my place? And I'm a kitted up freaking operator with night vision, flipped up now, looking at him like, you're about to die. But the look he gave me, I was just so surprised. Like he's mad at me for interrupting his movie. And then I went like this, and he went to reach for his AK, and he put his hand up like this at the same time. He's reaching for that AK. Couple rounds through his wrist, and then a couple here, and my buddies came in behind me and um, hit him with a shotgun and something else. But I want nobody dies fast. I watched a dude this wasn't me, my kill, but he got 5 rounds in the heart, this close together. Coolest shot group I've ever seen. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, rounds touching, right in the heart. And I was fascinated, how people die, and not in a morbid way. I'm just like, damn, he's still like fighting it, and it took a few seconds. Like, I guess the headshot brain coming out would be, the quickest one, but just come on, let's get real. Like, if we went in and killed bin Laden, do we have to wait till somebody kills 3,000 people? You know, I don't think so.
I agree with you 100%. And like you said, this guy's the Amir of,
Yeah.
assassinations. This ain't no saint. I interviewed a former Delta guy recently, 6 months ago, named Brent Tucker, who's a real fascinating dude. But he made a comment. He's like, I sleep like a baby. He's like,
Yeah.
he fought a lot against ISIS, and he said whenever he would watch an ISIS fighter die, the only emotion he ever felt was absolute joy. And this idea that, oh, you feel bad about it, you feel, you think about it all day, is like, nope, I sleep like a baby. Every dude I killed, I'm paraphrasing, when it came to ISIS, wax all of them. And obviously AQI, Al Qaeda in Iraq, it's not that different at all. um that's crazy. What does that say about this guy? He hates America.
Yeah.
He's an Islamic fundamentalist, and in his free time he's watching an American movie.
Yeah. Yeah. And his wife asked me after I kill him to take her back to America. She's thanking me for killing this asshole who didn't let her leave the house, and her daughters. He kept them locked, you don't leave the house. He's just a complete evil bastard. But yeah, what does it say about him? There were a couple, that were tough because they were young, real young, like teenager kids that it seemed like it always happened at the end of my rotation. And it was time to die. Like there's a time to kill, right? Let's just be real about it. Um, and when a dude's got a gun fighting, so anyways, it was legit. And I shot this kid, and it was dark at first. And then I move up closer as we're taking the objective, and I see him just rolling back and forth. And I wanted to like put around in him to finish, take him out of his misery, but you know, can't do that. So we got to call the medic and this and that. And then he died, but he was, you know, a teenager. That happened a couple of times. Those I would, had to work through, work out, had dreams about, talked to psychs about over the years, and I've worked through it. But all the other ones, man, like absolutely, I sleep better because of those.
Well, in that was literally my next question. And what a segue that you said you worked through it, you talked to the psychs about it. When you're at this level of teammates are getting hurt, teammates maybe dying, you're killing at a high level, but you're killing scumbags, you're killing people that would kill all of us if they could get away with it. Is it as simple as when you get home, hey, you got to see the psych X amount of times, or you need to do X, Y, and Z? Or do you just lean more into it? Like, this is war. This is what we're here to do. This is what we're going to do. How do you kind of handle all that?
Yeah, there's two ways to get through it. Uh, Help with a psych or more war. So most guys just do more war, and that's what I did and wanted to do. And like I said, 2012, I'm getting ready to think about retiring, and Benghazi happened, and I, flirted with the idea of going back to a team. And I think I saw Brett Favre on TV with the Vikings, like old man, just getting murdered out there, and I was like, ooh, I'm old and broke too. I don't want to be like that, so I didn't. But um, oh gosh, help me get back what we were on.
The trauma? What's the
Yeah.
plan? More war or the psych?
So I think everybody does it different, but um, I just needed to be away from it all. Like I don't want a job to train. I don't. It's fine that guys do. Like that's what they love. I like theology. I like to study and seek truth and philosophy and stuff like that. So that's what I'm doing now. Um, it's not a freaking contest, and that's the big thing. It's like an identity. My identity isn't a Delta Force operator anymore. It was for a long time, and I realized in seminary that my identity is like a man of God who wants to help kids, teenagers, coach boys, stuff like that. So, God, I've had so many shrinks, not all in a row, but as time goes on, I get better, and then something will come out of nowhere, and I'm wrecked, and I get more help because it's new, it's uncharted territory. It's not World War II, like we said. Nobody gives a shit. Is that right? So just what's the problem? Just get over it. No, fuck, no. I'm not just getting over it because I'm not. That's why we got so many people dying, which is a protest, I believe, these suicides.
Do you think in some people might watch what I'm about to say and think it's insensitive? I promise it's not insensitive. It's coming from a place of genuine interest. I've heard some guys say that they think one of the problems that leads to PTSD, depression, suicides is the system tells veterans who've done killing or have seen horrible things, you're messed up and you're going to be messed up forever. Here's some pills. Take these pills, you'll feel better, but you're a hurt puppy now. And they say that's a terrible way to treat veterans. And that's how they feel some guys have been treated. And what they say they should do, their words, not mine, is they ought to look these guys in the face and say, you're a badass. Like you went overseas, you kicked the shit out of these people, and you saw some bad things along the way, but you're a hard, tough dude. And if they told them that instead of your life's changed forever, maybe people would handle it better. What do you think about that?
I think I agree for the most part. I didn't experience that. I got lucky with great help. So, but I agree with what you're saying. That's why I love to go to Mike Tyson. There's an interview. He had a 4-year-old daughter die, and this guy is just pressing a little too hard. And Mike's younger, and he says, it's weird. It's eerie. Mike says, you have to go now. You understand? He like stops the interview. He's like, what? Because he went too insensitively in, and you do it professionally. You build trust, David, the right way, and this guy didn't with Mike. Mike's progressed now. He talks about it, and but people are fascinated with that, and I am too. I mean, it's like, who are we? Who are you? You're not a name. You're not somebody's son. You are all that, but you're more than that. I'm more than a dad, a brother. I'm figuring out. I don't know. I'll ask kids on the football team, who are you? What do you mean, coach? Exactly. Who are you? Right. The cells in your body change every 7 years. So all that stuff, like that's my wheelhouse.
Well said. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Well, and some people are like, well, you're a freaking weirdo. Yep, I am. I don't care, man. I got my little crude podcast here in the basement. I love it. It's hard work. I don't know where it's going, but I know like I'm doing a good job because my son, man, he calls me. He's on this field trip for school in Williamsburg, colonial stuff. His friend won an Xbox and a video game and gave it to my son. I have twin 11-year-old boys. My son calls me crying, happy, Dad, because he'd been wanting this Xbox. And he's like, I don't know how to thank him. I'm so grateful. I said, you're doing it, buddy. You're showing him. You called me. Like, man, I did something right to raise a kid like that, to have gratitude and not be afraid to express himself.
Oh, absolutely. That's a great story here. And like, I think you'd agree, gratitude is contagious. I think that's what you told me when it was my birthday a few other days ago. And
Yeah.
and
Your
it's
gratitude.
true. It's true. Positivity is contagious, and that is incredible. And I towards the end, we're gonna get into kind of the football stuff and handling the youth. And I can't wait to unpick your brain on that. On the kind of closing this loop on the evil stuff, do you think we can get rid of this freak level of evil that thinks beheading, the torture? Can we get rid of that, the Islamic fundamentalist, or is it just something you can only ever hope to contain and it's going to be here forever?
Netanyahu, Yanni Netanyahu was killed in Entebbe, said he compared it to trimming your fingernails. You got to keep trimming. What can you do with the Arab population? Thus, you have the sadness, the endless sadness of young men destined for endless war. So, I don't think we can in this world, especially nowadays. In our smart people at Ivy League schools are what? Like, I can't even process that they're pro Hamas. Like, that doesn't. I can't even begin to think about it because where do you start?
It's beyond sickening. And I'm glad you brought that up. It to me is disgusting. Could you imagine on September 12th of 2001 if kids went out on college campuses and rallied in support of Osama bin Laden? My brain can't even, I can't imagine it. And it's happening in real time today.
And it's kind of our responsibility and our fault if we don't just slap these kids, I guess. I mean, I don't, Hoist Gracie, black belt, won the first three UFCs. It's like UFC 300 now. Hoist was at the beginning. He would train us in the unit, choked me out. He's like, look at his face. He shows. I'm like, a certain choke on me. In his book, he had a slap. And I'm like, why would he have a slap? Because people need to be slapped sometimes. We need to bring back the slap, David.
Need to bring back the slap. So you guys had a UFC fighter that came in and trained you in your hand-to-hand combat?
Yeah, Hoist would come. I don't know if he still does, but yeah, Hoist Gracie. And then Matt Hughes, Diego Sanchez, Randy Couture came, and my team took him and his wife out shooting long guns. Yeah, it was pretty cool.
That is incredible. That makes a lot of sense. I mean, you want to learn how to do something, go to the experts. And when it comes to fighting on the grappling on the ground, the UFC, I mean, that's what they do. I got a couple of questions here that are, fan curiosity ones that I think will give us an opportunity to unpack a lot of things. When it comes in your mind, there's no right or wrong answer to this. In your mind, what separates someone who's like a all-star operator and then someone who's just getting by? They're in the unit, they're good enough to be there, but there's this guy up here. What's he doing differently from someone who's just treading water?
Well, I think I was kind of in both places at different times. And they would say personality will get you fired before performance. Some guys just wouldn't fit. And it's not easy. So I think it goes all the way back to childhood. That's why I love talking to the Aussies, because they always start there and they're not ashamed of it. They just, how was it? Because that determines a lot of who and how you're going to be. And, I had a disastrous childhood, so I was a wreck. And I'd be over there sometimes when I was brand new there. People were like, what the hell's wrong with you? Nothing. I mean, what I just left my baby daughter and my dog died, and I'm here on a surge, and I'm just depressed as hell, but I didn't think to say that. I would now. But after I got good and had some years and, got the swagger, humble swagger, I call it, then it was great. So I think it's so many things. It's where you start. It's confidence. For me, it was my uh, I always call it honesty, open willingness, just, willingness to say, God, I repent. I confess I was trying to die. I was trying to murder myself. I'm sorry for that. When I start to get honest and open about stuff, then I get stronger inside and I can look people in the eye and face things. So, gosh, I can only speak for myself. That's what separates me is honesty and openness, not being fake. I'm not going to be fake. I'm not a how's the weather kind of guy. I'm a, philosophy guy. So people are weird about that, but they think I'm weird, and fine, but you need one of me at least.
Well, people think I'm weird too, so it happens. It happens to both of us.
Yeah.
You said in our last interview how you missed the level of action. You missed taking out bad guys, and you genuinely missed that feeling. But like you said earlier, you hated the Army.
Yeah.
So could you explain to the audience who might be a little confused by, well, he misses it, but he hated a lot of it as well. What was it specifically that you desperately, it's like, I think in the first interview, you kind of clinched your hands up and you're like, what creates that visceral emotional thing that you miss?
It's the fight. It's the facing the tank. It's taking a risk. And that's what these students that are protesting need to do, is take a risk of considering somebody else's opinion, and the fact that you're saying that Israel doesn't have a right to exist. Consider using logic. One, it's why I coach football. I was asked to. I don't know it. I didn't play it, but my friend said, just trust me and speak about what's on your heart, and the guys will get it, and they do. I'm nervous as shit doing that, but I do it. A podcast, I'm not a freaking. I can't do that. I had so many people say, man, that dude he's a good interviewer. Talking about our first one, he knew the questions to ask you and all that. It's not easy. Like my little rudimentary podcast, it's fun. and we got like 6 listeners, 2 in India and 1 in Russia and 1 in Alaska. But I don't care, man. It's like I also get, you know, people's feedback, and it's worth it. So, uh, but okay, do I miss it? It's living. Okay, sneaking up, sneaking up, and putting a bomb on somebody's door is living, because you might get shot through that door. Man, everything goes quiet, and you're wearing pelters, which amplify everything. And they shut off, so they block the gunfire from your ears. They're awesome. Uh, you hear the radio on them, but they also amplify sounds around you. So it's like every little step you take, you can hear, and you're being so quiet. You're putting your charge up. Um, there's one time I put this charge up, and I get back, and it blows, and my buddies are behind us. You know, they're pulling security for me, looking in on ladders over a wall. Boom, the door blows right before, you know, it was a delayed charge. So right before it went off, I saw my buddy like like this, and I'm looking at him. And then I found out later, like the guy opened the door right as the charge went off. Ooh. You know, he lived, but it like blew his pants off. It was like comic, like a, you know, cartoon. And but I don't know, things like that, like, you know, that's a story that we'll tell forever. Because it was funny, you know. Um, we dusted the guy off, and, you know, we weren't trying to kill him, and he's fine. We got our intel, and we got a funny story out of it. But yeah, what I miss, I say that I miss it when I'm asked, like, do you miss it? No, I'm so glad I'm retired. But man, if I could, yeah, like once more into the breach, there's just nothing like it. Um, Nothing like it.
And everyone I've ever interviewed from your old unit says the exact same thing. From the moment the helicopter touches down or whenever it is to when you pack it up and go home, they all say that you cannot put into words what that feeling is like going through the door.
Yeah, and you can take that to anybody in life, anywhere. What's your tank? What is it that you are so afraid of, but that you need to do for whatever reason? You need to face it, or confront somebody, or leave somebody, or whatever. I promise, if you do it and ask for help here, horizontally and vertically, you will get that help, and and you will live.
Absolutely. This is one I think that is very important, and I'm curious to see what you say. And maybe it's directed probably at a younger audience, but I just watched a video clip that someone sent to me of the 2008 raid that your unit flew into Syria. I mean, there's a Wikipedia page about it. We don't need to get into specific details, but people can read about the '08 Delta raid. They interviewed all these people who allegedly were on the ground when it happened. I say allegedly because it's a propaganda video. And they talk about how the Americans, they essentially, they just want to kill kids. They just want to kill innocent women. These special ops teams, they're just essentially murderers, which you and I both know is complete fiction. When you hear people make those claims, what response do you have for someone who says, you know what, these tier one elements, they don't care. They just want to get it on. And if kids get killed, if women get killed, makes no difference to them. I don't believe that. I'm just repeating what they're saying.
Yeah, yeah.
What would you say to anyone who believes that that's the case?
Just the most basic, easiest question, like, who are you talking about? Have you talked to Dave Nielsen? Because they can. Christology podcast. Yeah, Jesus, you know, he came to help the weak and the broken, the sick. I'm one of them. Okay. That's why I'm doing the Christology podcast. Have you talked to me? No. I spent freaking months of my life, many months, training in 110-degree North Carolina, nasty summer heat, wearing 80 pounds of lightweight shit to learn how to not kill women and children. Right. Contrarily, I saw them do it. I told you about the house fire where we were getting them, you know, last house on a target, and they made those kids burn alive out of pride. Like, oh, we got a problem. They're the ones doing that. you know? So I'd ask them, who have you talked to? Who specifically does that or says that? And there may be one outlier somewhere, but he ain't part of the community. I guarantee it.
Right. And to answer that question, I don't think anyone from your unit has ever made that claim. I think people who hate America are more than happy to make that claim as a blanket statement. And then what they hope is Americans hear it and think, oh, these guys are scumbags. Like they're all just a bunch of wannabe murderers, which is so wildly offensive and inaccurate. It pisses me off. And I'm not even there.
Well, good. That's why I'm so thankful for you, man. We got to, somebody's going to take control of the narrative, right? Let's tell the stories. There's scripture, man, of Psalm 107. Let the redeemed of the Lord tell their stories. Let the wise listen to them. And this is everybody. You're going to have a story. You're developing your story right now. When you're older, somebody's going to be asking you how because something's going to come of all this, man. It will. It is.
I 100% believe that. I know that you're right, and I can't wait to see where that journey, not just for you and me, both go. I've got to ask a follow up to a question we did talk about in the first interview that is the most watched, to my knowledge. Now, maybe this has changed. To my knowledge, is the most viewed SEAL Team 6 Delta video that's ever been put out publicly. And you told a story in there. And before we get to that story, for people who haven't seen the first interview, could you give your opinion on what makes the units great and the differences in your mind? And then we're going to get into the story you told that went mega viral.
What makes the units great is like any workplace or team, who's going to be the quarterback? Who's going to take charge? Who's going to be the lineman who just takes a smash in the Rangers just boom, boom. Somebody's going to step up and do that. Somebody's going to be on the bench. Most people are going to be in the stands. So the difference is with us, man, it's life and MRF and death for real. When you see that, when it happens the first time and you see your friend or your dog die, and then you see them die, and you see that you're winning, and you're winning because you tried out for the best you could possibly do in your branch. Delta Force for the Army, SEAL Team 6 for the Navy. So I think the sort of back and forth of who's better, I think that happens before you even get there or know anybody, because once you get to know each other, we're just got a different skill set. I could probably outland nav any SEAL, or nobody's going to walk further than me. That's my thing. I can walk forever, but I can't swim 50 meters underwater. No way. And it's not like it comes down to that, but they're just as awesome, man. They're
Oh,
good guys.
absolutely. They're just as awesome. And I love the fact that a lot of Delta guys lean into this question. They have fun with it. The SEAL Team 6 guys have fun with it as well. I've only had one person ever get very angry, and it wasn't a guy who was on either team. It was just a it was just a white side Navy SEAL who lost his I'll tell you that. I don't remember if I told you that last time. I'll tell you that when we're done recording. When it comes to CQB, I've started is I've become better at doing what I'm doing, learning a little bit more specifics. If you had to guess, if you guys hit the same target, they hit it, then it resets and you hit it. Is the CQB going to be pretty much identical in the same speed? Or are you guys, because that's your bread and butter, are you going to be faster than they are?
Man, you put some thought into this one, because we're going to be better there. Yeah. I mean, okay. Pride point. I'm old and done, right? I'm gone. I'm not telling stories to have the coolest stories. There's guys with way cooler stories. I'm doing it to say it's okay and we need to do this and grow for the next generation. So, but you hit a pride point there. we're gonna do it faster. I mean, we would time some 2 and 3 story buildings in training. It's like 58 seconds. I go, oh my God. I mean, I had nightmares during the wars when I would be home of my own troop coming after me, because there's no surviving that. So I know how they do it. I'm not going to talk about it. It's not right or wrong. Um, but I know how we do it and ain't never seen it done better. So I will hold my ground there.
I love that's a great quote. They ought to sell that on a t-shirt. But okay, I'm gonna get into the laser story now because when we did our first interview, I had a lot of people reach out after you told that story, and they were just kind of curious because we didn't really get into it that much, like how something like that could even happen. Like what could the circumstances have been for a mistake of that magnitude to be made? So could you walk us through the infamous story of when a SEAL Team 6 dude put his laser on his rifle pointed right at you?
Yeah. I'm going through the files. It's kind of how it happens is the Swiss cheese theory. You know, if you keep stacking Swiss cheese, eventually the holes are going to line up. The holes are mistakes. And eventually when they line up, something really bad is going to go wrong. Um, so a lot of it is fatigue, night after night after night, lack of sleep, um, end of a cycle. And I'm trying to think of the one. There were Rangers that did it all the time too, and it was almost always because, Sergeant, I'm sorry, I hadn't slept in 2 days. It's like, all right, well, wake up, but it's happened in every war, so why wouldn't it happen now? Um, and also, sometimes you use it for signaling, but it gets down to command and control and combining elements, and it's so not easy. That's what Jeff Teagues did, supremely well, way beyond my ken and ability. Like I'm just one dude who can handle my job well. Coordinating all that is, art. So the laser on my chest was like, what the, you know? And I'm like, and my team leader was like, he did it right back to show him. And I learned that from him. So after that, I would, hey, get your laser off of me. Fratricide happens. It's so depressing, but yeah,
So,
Swiss cheese.
so did the SEAL Team 6 guys not know that you were American? Did they think you were a bad guy element that had come in?
I never talked to the guys, and it was a target that we meshed together. I'm not sure if we started together or they did this half, we did the other half. It might have been he turned with his had left his laser on and didn't know it. I don't know. I never talked to the guy. There were other times with the Rangers. Rangers did it where I did. Found out exactly who that was. I knew the vehicle. Yeah, they're looking around. They see, you see a person and a guy wearing an AK vest looks very similar. So, I mean, I was super, super, super disciplined with that. Like, make sure, always make sure. Definitely no kids, and women, and even women who would, have bombs. It's like, please don't do this. Please don't do this. You're trying to stop them, but or the guy dressed as a woman who shot my three buddies right in front of me.
Well, I told you this last time we talked. Brian Gilligan it's told me that story. I interviewed him, and I did an interview with him. I don't know how many of these names you'll recognize, but it was Brian Gilligan, Bob Keller, and Nate Dudley. We did like a group interview.
Oh, cool.
And so before I talked, because Gilligan was one of those
Yep.
guys you're referring, so he had told me that story
Mm.
like a year and a half before we had ever spoken. And then another guy who was there told me that story privately. And then lo and behold, I meet you and you were also there. It's like, what are the odds that you have all
Yeah.
these guys? Um, that's a crazy one. That how did they survive that is something that I've not been able to wrap my head around.
That's all God. And that's becoming like a unifying story to me. There's a guy named Caleb. He's awesome. He's a working as a sheriff's deputy, and I love him so much, man. So he doesn't go on and tell the story. That's fine. He says you do, and that's fine. Like we're cool. Um, he taught me so much. Uh, he was one of the guys there that got shot. And but what was funny was so after that first interview, I gave credit to who shot the man, ma'am, the man dressed as a woman, to somebody else, and Caleb was like, blah blah blah. We talked for like 3 hours, and like, hey, by the way, I shot that guy 6 times as I was falling down with a bullet in my side. I'm like, okay, okay, okay. I said, oh, so you do care about the stories. It's got to be right. He's like, yeah. It's because he's like, well, I don't want to, we shouldn't be telling our stories out there, but if you're gonna, get it right. So, all right, Caleb, you got
That
it.
is, I mean, well, that's the definition of badass, that you're falling to
Heck
the
yeah.
ground after taking an AK round and you're dumping 6 rounds in the other direction.
That's movie shit. Yep. That's good stuff.
And when that situation happened, correct me if I'm wrong, the three of them were in front of you, right? So you're in the
Yep.
fourth.
Yep.
So they get hit. Did you see where the shooter was before the shooting had started?
No, I was like, so we were coming around a corner and I was just breaking the corner when, the first guy's coming back, damn it. Cause he had been shot 5 times previously and he got shot every rotation. It's like, George is going to get shot. He's coming back saying, damn it, before, as I'm hearing the blast, and, we're flanking out to do our thing. And it was over before it started for us, for my team. We were behind that team, Gilligan's team. Gilligan took one in the gut though.
Yeah, and he pulled up when we did that interview. He showed it. I think he pulled up his arm too. That's still one of the craziest stories. And every time I hear it from anyone who was there, that this dude was just dressed as a woman. And Gilligan told me when I interviewed him that he was convinced that was a dude under there. But the people on the radio were like, "No, it's not. Don't engage." And he was like, his exact words were, "When I turned and I looked and I could see a dude with facial hair, I knew I was effed because now he's got the first shot and I don't. And I could have smoked him previously and I didn't because the people watching above were like, it's a woman, ignore it." And he's damn lucky he's alive.
Yeah. Yeah. All three of them. And yeah, and that dude was ready to die because a lot of times they'll do that and they'll just spray automatic and like you very rarely hit somebody like that, or a grenade or body bomb. And but this dude, I mean, he hit everybody he was aiming at. He was willing, ready to die. So there's a lot of warriors out there over there and they're crafty. It's not easy. Well, anybody can kill caveman. The ranger officer says, well, sir, how many cavemen have you killed? Because none of them are easy. None of them. I don't care the circumstance.
You're preaching to the converted on that one, no doubt. Um, Speaking of kind of performance, you said personality will get you fired before performance does. That is a fascinating quote mindset. When it comes to being told it's time for you to go, so you said personality. What are some personality traits that are just not going to be acceptable? And then what are things you could do? Maybe you're a really good operator, but if you do, you an accidental discharge or you don't show up for something, what are things that are guaranteed to get you shown the door?
I think trying to be somebody you're not, or trying to get there so that you can be that, which everybody is to a point, but just not being you, not being where you're at. One time I was out there shooting and we had this instructor, Jerry Micklick, a guy who can freaking throw an aspirin up in the air and shoot it with a 22. I saw him, and I'm having a bad day, so I'm just not hitting anything. He's like, wow, you really suck. And I'm like, yeah, I do. I really do, man. I got to get better. So it's just, I think being where you're at, be where you're at and be you. And if you don't know you, then learn, figure out who you are. That's what I'm doing right now. Um, and people see that. So commanders see that, the psych see that, you go through psych training. I had a cop ask me once as I'm getting a restraining order on all my weapons taken from me for doing nothing. What do you think about sending criminals to the front lines? And I was like, man, I didn't even answer him, but people are that clueless, you know? Like you have to have a high score to get in the infantry, higher for the Rangers, the unit. I mean, my teammate was like the smartest ever on the Wonderlic or one of them tests, and he's built like a cave troll and, builds liquid cooled computers on the side. Like it's just really, really interesting people.
That's genius level intelligence.
Yeah.
When it comes to, so you got that answered. What is like, do they have things where it's like there's zero tolerance for this? Like again, an accidental discharge,
Yeah.
or if they find out that you're abusing drugs or whatever, if you get caught doing something like that, is it see you later. Don't even think about coming back.
Yeah, I mean, so AD is that, at least you're gone for a year. Maybe you can come back. Accidental discharge. Usually alcohol related incidents are, you're gone for sure. And everybody knows that. Same with the Rangers and, probably everywhere. But personality wise, I'm thinking to people who just like didn't fit. It usually happens pretty quick, but there's some who are there maybe a year, 2, 3. And it's just like, eh. And really what it is, it's the stubborn type of personality who just won't, not, I hate the word compromise. It's not that, but it's like, it's just not open to thinking. That's kind of the Ranger way, is just, well, the boss said this, so we're doing it. There's a time for that, but there's a time to have ground up leadership like the unit has. And those young guys on the team learn, don't just say something stupid. Say something, valuable. So I heard guys say all the time, it's still the best place in the world to work. And I bet it still is.
I'm sure it still is. I want to get into now what, well, real quick, we're going to get into what you're up to now, your podcast, football, and where you want to go from here. But before I get into that, I do want to touch on guys who are speaking out, guys who are sharing their stories. And I want to preface that because I think what you're doing is incredibly important. I think every veteran who has a story to tell, who's not going to like tell national security secrets,
Right.
has the right to say it. I'm not going to say his name. I interviewed a guy from the Navy side, and he's, when he spoke to me, the interview did very well. He was very honest about some things that had happened to him, didn't say any secrets, and people weren't happy with him on the Navy side. They're like, we don't say anything ever. And he's like, well, I went and I killed those people, and I earned the right to tell my story. My friends got killed, et cetera, et cetera. I'm paraphrasing what he said. I agree with that. And as long as, in my opinion, you're not sharing secrets, you're not telling things that aren't known, why would any commander tell guys to suffer in silence? If I can look it up on Wikipedia, but you're going to tell the guys who actually bled over there that they should just shut the F up. He went through a lot, and he said he started getting better. One of the things was he felt like, hey, people do care. Like, people actually care what I did. And he's like, when they told us to stay silent, it's like, okay, well, I guess no one gives a damn. For you personally, you've done a couple interviews, you have the movie. Where do you think the line is? You should or you shouldn't? Should anyone be allowed to? Are there people who should never be allowed to? Like, for you, what's your opinion on that whole spectrum?
What sparks me is what you just said about the Navy guy who was told not to. I think there's a lot of envy, just straight envy from maybe, let's say, I don't know, high-ranking Ranger officer who, wasn't in the mix in the fight. And it's like they'll always pick one person to give, these awards to, like, to recognize an enlisted guy. Okay, look, and it's like, okay, he was one piece, and he knows that. We know that. There's no bad feelings there, but okay, he's recognized. So now everybody else shut up and go about your way. No, like, that's what really gets me going is, you know, Jeff Teague's having the courage to, and I'm not making money. I'm not trying to make money. Did not make money off the documentary. I did it because it was not a money-making venture. It was Channing Tatum and HBO saying, do you want to tell your story about Pepper? Yep. We built trust and we did that. Same with you. Same with Jeff Teagues. He's hunting child predators, right? It's just a continuation of our service to our God and country. That's all we're doing. So to tell us not to talk about it, no. For one thing, it's been 20 years, right? There's nothing that stays secret that long. It wasn't even secret in the first place, Jessica Lynch. It was just botched. And for whatever reason, you're not going to talk about the 9 bodies we dug up, to the point Pat Tillman thinks we're just there to bomb people while we're waiting. Like, man, he just didn't know. I want to call that out. I cannot coexist with hypocrisy. I'm not saying that I am not a hypocrite sometimes. Of course I am. I need to be called out. I'm doing it at my church this Wednesday. I got to have a council meeting, and I'm going to break out the Thucydides quote. You know, when you separate scholars and warriors, thinking done by cowards, you're fighting by fools. Meaning, warriors will become fools if we're let to go. And I can be called a fool. I can't be called a coward. Scholars will become cowards if they don't listen to the warriors. We need each other. It has to work that way, and it won't. So what I'm facing at just church council, it's funny, but is like CEOs from companies who this guy keeps telling me he's a type A personality. Like, oh, that's just me. So I'm like, dude, you're taking over my meeting. I'm the chairperson. Well, sorry, I'm a type A. I'm like, you have no idea what a type A personality is, man. My buddy Hux, you know, a SEAL dared him to run a marathon on a treadmill, and he did 26 miles on a treadmill. Just, you know what I mean? Like, to be funny. So, we have to continually stand up to those who, uh, you know, playing Madden video game think they're actually playing football. They're not.
Not at all. And the thing that I think personally bothers me, I've never told you this before. I'm going to tell you now, because it involved our first interview, and it really it did bother me. There was criticism I faced for our first interview was when you were telling some of the stories about the killing and taking out terrorists. There was points where I was chuckling and I was smiling and I was laughing, as you were at points too. And their criticism was like, do you not think this is serious? It's like, no, I think it's pretty effing serious. I also think it's pretty badass when a bad guy takes a woman as a human shield and gets a round put through his head. And I'm not going to apologize for thinking it is. So you've got critics who think that if I don't treat the guest like a wounded puppy dog, I'm being disrespectful. I think that's insane. And then you've got people from inside the military telling people like you or the Navy guys, how dare you? How dare you talk about your service? It's like, well, I did it. I earned it. I'll talk about whatever I want as long as it's not secret. I cannot wrap my brain around the idea it's better to suffer in silence because I've, I had a wife, and I really can't say who this was. I had a wife come up to me and thank me for giving her husband the opportunity
Wow.
to talk and that there were immediate changes. I had his Navy SEAL say, hey, this was better than anything that any, drug, whatever it might have been. So honestly, if you're someone in the military telling people to suffer in silence, in my opinion, the problem's with you. The problem is not with those speaking now.
I'm glad you just told me that. That affected me. I started to like tear up when you told me that about the wife, because that is how it works, man. That is good stuff. Glad you shared that. And yeah, I mean, like I said, I had one guy who was like not even in the damn wars, you know, freaking Cold War hero who trained his whole career, calling me out for talking, and so it took me a while to work through that. I think I still am one of my own peers, but it's like, dude, shut up, man. I did the heavy lifting during the heavy years. I am proud, and I love my dudes that I was with and the ones that are coming. My sons are 11 years old. I don't want them in a useless freaking war. I cannot believe we were in Afghanistan that long. And it's all because the warriors didn't tell the scholars at some point to listen.
This is where I'm really interested to dig into you now. You've got your Christology podcast, which you can listen to the Jeff. If anyone who's watching this, go listen to the Jeff Teagues episode with Dave and Jeff. It is an outstanding episode. You're coaching football. You're actively involved with the church. So let's take those one by one. We'll break down all three. Let's start with the podcast. When you've been doing the podcast, like I said, you've had the fact you got Jeff Teagues on there is incredible. You talked a little bit about it here so far. What's the goal? What do you want to get out of the Christology podcast?
Thanks for asking too. The name of it, Christology. What does that mean? Well, ology, obviously everybody knows that, the study of. It's who Jesus is. And I think that question will be answered by everybody. It is being answered in how we live our lives. And when I was in seminary, I wanted to learn some Greek. Here's another scholar warrior thing. My sister, married to a Stanford professor, said to me, "You ever consider going back to college?" Because I'd been to George Mason for a couple of years as an English major and, liked it, but just left to go back in the Army. And it pissed me off that she said that. You ever think about finishing your college degree? Right or wrong, why it pissed me off, I don't know. But you ever think about serving your country? But it did spark me to to go to school, and I did, and I learned Greek, and I like loved it, man. I learned so much for 5 years. I was magna cum laude graduate in theology, like, and then I was asked to coach, so I stopped. But all through that schooling, it was like Paul's Christology or John's Christology was high and low, and it's just fascinating. Like, who is he? Well, he says who he is. Do we believe him or not? If we believe him, and if we say his name and we slip on a rock and get our finger caught in the door and this and that, or when somebody dies, oh, Jesus, then let's think that through, talk that through. That's what my podcast is all about.
Do you generally do you have a guest on every episode, or are there episodes where it's standalone?
Oh, it's such hard work. We've had a few guests. I had a buddy that came from Egypt. I haven't done one in a couple of weeks. I just took like a spring break. We're in season 2. So we just kind of take what's coming. There's a SF captain moving in next door to me. Really good guy. I'm, making friends with. 24 years. I'm like twice his age. And, I'll probably have him on at some point just to, hey, sir, how's it going, man? Like, he's in language school right now, finishing the Q course. I don't think he knows all the stuff I've done, but, I'll tell him and I'll ask about him.
Oh, that would be a must listen episode. Well, look, I hope your podcast, because I like people sharing their stories. That's why we're here. And if your podcast gives the opportunity to educate, share your story, learn the stories of others, trust me, I hope it takes off to the moon. And I know if you can get some guys like Jeff Teagues or people of that same world, I mean, it's gonna be huge. And like I said, that episode, if you're watching this and you enjoy this, go check out the Christology podcast. Listen to the episode with Jeff Teagues. Trust me, it is well worth your time. Now I got to ask about football. Before we started filming, you brought up that I have 2 football helmets. And in this interview, you said, you don't know football, but you do it. You share your message with the kids. What is it like being a football coach? Is it a varsity team you're coaching? What's the age group? And kind of like how do you connect with these players?
It's varsity football. I've coached. I'm on my 3rd high school team, not purposely planned like this, but coached at Pinecrest here in Moore County, North Carolina, my first year. And then I follow my friend around, Antoine Murchison. He played D-line for Clemson back in the day, when 07, 08 on, when I was in the wars. We became like best buddies. So he's the one that asked me to coach. He's a defensive coordinator, just, 6'5", 270, just like a dude. And, we freaking meshed because we met in recovery. He was, we were both recovering alcoholics. The first thing he told me was that he had been bullied by girls. And I'm like, this is a Clemson D lineman exposing himself, being vulnerable. So like right off the bat, I'm like, wow, this dude is real. And then I told him some real stuff, and it's like, man, we need to help people get real. So he asked me to coach, and I'm like, what? Heart and minds. Okay. So I do. And I just go in there, and, you know, everything was fine. And then I went to a middle school to like do both. And this group just was not jiving, was not listening, talking about quitting. And I was like, I did the football coach to get in the stands. And I told him the Jessica Lynch story. And this is like a really poor area. The field was like one of those movies where there's just trash everywhere. I told him that story, and I said, look, we dug him up and carried him home because we care. We need each other. We care about each other. And, they straightened up. And it was just from there, like, we had a bonding team. So, yep, stories matter.
That's incredible. And how old were those kids? You said a middle school team?
Those were middle schoolers, yeah. East Middle,
Th-
Montgomery County.
That
Good, great,
that's
great kids.
and so what high school are you working with now?
Now I'm at Union Pines in Moore County, and just with my friend Antoine, he took a break for a while, so I took a break, and he just started back up because it's when it gets going, it's like every morning, 5 a.m. to 9, and then you go do your day. But it's so rewarding. No pay for me. Antoine gets paid, volunteer, but it's just slow process. Football is life compressed. Like in a season, you're gonna have 5, 7, 10 years of life. That one year with the middle school, like there were 5 murders or accidents or murders, deaths of kids and their families in that one year football year. We're working through all that. We're talking about it, Um, God, yeah. They're so, I mean, that's why they mimic each other, right? We use each other's lingo. The war is kicked off, right? And then football uses warrior lingo. It's because they're, you know, and I'll say this, if we can play football and solve the problems, let's do that. Like that's what it's for.
Right. And it's certainly if you're a troubled teenager who has no structure, no discipline, maybe no father figure, but you can get onto a sports team, whether that's a football team or a basketball team. And if you have coaches around you and teammates around you who really care, that structure can take you out of a bad situation where you might start looking to bad people as role models. And now you've got structure, discipline, there's rewards, consequences. We need more of that for young men in America. I don't know if you
Yeah.
would agree, but I think you will.
Yeah. To the point of, like I tell kids sometimes, there's nothing more scary and risky and real that you can do than try to be an inside linebacker right now because you're in this line. You're small, but we're going to try and make you an inside linebacker. You're going to smash every time. And so this is as real as it gets for you. I tell them that, yeah, I went to war and faced death, but for you right now, this is the same thing. Let's see if you can do it. I believe you can. Right. And then he tries and coach, stay in touch with these kids. And then now they're having kids. And it's like, coach, thank you so much. God, it's like, that's what life's about, man.
I can see the joy on your face. I mean, it really is neat to hear. We've been on this for almost 2 hours, and you've told stories about killing the most evil people out there, and now you're smiling and laughing, talking about what it's like to be a football coach. That life range, that in and of itself is exceptionally impressive. And I will be, if you definitely should send me the name of the school when the season starts, and I'll definitely be following along, cheering you guys on because one, I think it's great that you're taking a proactive role in the lives of young men. And two, as you can see from the helmets behind me, I love football and I'm not going to apologize for it.
No.
Um, Now on church, I have a couple questions when it comes to religion. First is, were you very religious in your time when the wars were going on compared to how you are now? Like I know you talked about praying to God, uh, that you want to die. Has your relationship with God grown stronger since leaving the military, or would you say it's been the same in and out?
I'd say if you grafted, it would be the same because I did the best I could do in the military to relate and understand God. It's not a matter of following rules, it's a matter of believing. Behavior follows belief. Abraham believed first, and then everything else goes in line. So it's not like, oh, I don't know if I can shoot somebody because I believe in God. Like, again, read. How about Deborah, who put a stake through the guy's temple? There's a time to kill, and a time to heal. So um, it was probably the same. I was not religious growing up. It's just a fascination for me when I look at the stars, when I want to know um, everything, the truth, how we got here. I want to know all that. And I do believe. I mean, so yeah, I mean, it was different when I was in. because, you can't be a warrior and a poet at the same time. And, it's just, you have to be hard and hardened, and that serves its purpose. But when you come home, you can't be hard and hardened. It's hard. And man, I forgot to say, nobody should be telling you not to laugh at this stuff. You're taking it in. You helped me with those reactions last interview. I remember when I saw you smile, I was like, okay, I'm okay. Right. I needed that. So thank you. And whoever said that, they can talk to me.
I'll send them your way. But
Yeah.
that's great that you say that. And like I said, I mean, that I don't know if bothered is the right word, but I saw that and I was like, well, I don't want people to think that I'm disrespecting. And then I kind of like immediately snapped out. It was like, why am I even thinking that? Like, I know I respect veterans. I spend an incredible amount of time sharing their stories. Who is this person or these people to judge me for how I conduct myself? If you had told me, hey, I think you're being really disrespectful, that cut pretty deep. But at least it would be coming from somebody who's been there and somebody who's done those things. It took about a second for me to be like, these people have no idea what they're talking about. If someone else reached out, let's say it, Brad Thomas, who I've interviewed a handful of times, I think Brad Thomas is a class act, an incredible American, and he has been nothing but unbelievably kind to me every time I've spoken to him. If he reached out and was like, you know what, I think your conduct is really offensive in the way you carry yourself, I would listen to him and I'd be like, okay, help me understand why that is. But he's been there, he's done it, and I
Right.
know that when he says something, he's just not spouting off online. That's how I look at it, anyways.
So here's the challenge to you. When you see your peers, if, because you've been in that territory now, you've taken risks and you're willing to be corrected. I just had 3 80-year-old ladies last week tell me, lovingly rebuke me, that I was a pushover in a council meeting. It hurt like hell, but I hugged them like, hey, you can do better than that. Because I'm just learning this board meeting stuff. So to take that is awesome. So your challenge would be if you see your peers, uh, doing that, for you to talk to them. It's hard,
Absolutely.
and it's hard.
I want to now on the church thing. When you're talking about the council meetings, so you're in a leadership role. It definitely seems like at your church. Can you explain what role you serve at your church and what challenges you face within that role?
So there's a council, which is like a board of a company. A church is a charity, a 501(c)(3). I look, I despised church 90% of my life. I didn't like it. Sometimes I still don't like to go. It's not about church. Like I said, it's about believing, and then your actions follow that. So it's about unity and community is why I go. And once I got honest, open, and willing, it happened for me. The miracle happened. Oh, I'm making friends. I care what an 80-year-old woman thinks. But my wife was the chairperson first. She was elected to the council last year. And so we're in this rich, it's embarrassing, man. So, David, we just put a roof, man. Man. We put a roof on an orphanage in Sierra Leone last week. The Christology podcast did. My church was like oblivious. It's a rich church. I call them out. I'm calling my own church out because they're oblivious. We did a presentation just last week. Look, these are orphans, who don't have food, and they have malaria, and the mortality rate is like 17% of kids die before 5 years old. So my wife and I, the Christology podcast, they wanted to hear the message. They wanted to pick my brain for theology. This church that was just stood up, right on, man. Like, that's the work. And he said, let's build an orphanage. I'm like, I didn't think it would happen. So we called it Brick by Brick, and we just get this trickling in money that goes so far there. They're building bricks by hand. It's on my channel. And we have an orphanage for 12 kids to have a roof over their head. Literally orphans with no parents, parents gone, scavenging for food. So that's the church. It's not a building, it's the people, but it's, the people united. And so we just presented this to the church, and, I'm on the council, and what they like to do is talk about their money and recount it and shuffle it and stack it in different ways. It's like, no, man, what the word says is we're supposed to take this out and make 2 bags into 4. So the most popular video podcast was with my daughter, who happened to live most of her life in Florida with her mom, around those just silly churches that you see, right? The prosperity gospel. I had her on. I said, Cam, just be you. And she was, and she just said what was on her mind. This is the Christology podcast. And she's calling out the ridiculousness of the church. That's okay, man. We're going to talk about where we're at, what's real.
And that is how you should
Right.
approach religion, how you should approach dealing with, disagreement in not just a church, but any part of life.
Yeah.
Do you enjoy being in this leadership role? Do you feel like your life is better for it?
I do now. Just like last week, because I saw it coming. I saw these PhDs making their little triangle and a click, which is exactly what we're coming from. And these people left, and we're trying to stop that from happening. So I forget exactly what it was, but it's like what I always tell my wife, I got to get hit a few times to get in the fight. Man, watch the Mike Tyson Botha fight when he knocks Botha out right before he puts his hand up like this, and then he face plants him. But that's me. So I think it was this guy saying, "Oh, I'm a type A, Dave," putting his hand on my shoulder and trying to intimidate me. It's like, all right, man. And so, just went through my process of prayer, talking to my wife, and I just went in and talked to him. And I said, it's just absolutely a fucking disaster what just happened. You hijacking my meeting. I swear I don't mean to. I want to not swear, but it's like, I'm from Detroit. I lived in my freaking Ford Granada in the 80s before I joined the army. Okay, I've lived a hard life. Jesus is my Lord and Savior. I still have a mouth sometimes. I'm getting better. But yeah, I said that. It's just like, this is not the way it's going to be, guys. And so I read our vision, mission, purpose, and it's supposed to be about relationships and discipleship. And it ain't. So I'm going to bring in my freaking green RPG trunk of shit. I'm not going to show him this. This is too spooky for him. The hood, the Zarqawi hood. It's not his, but I'm going to pull something out. Probably the Panama story, Jim Markwell. Here's a black beret. I walked 700 miles. I faced General Shinseki in Congress when he gave berets to the whole army, something like that. I get the type A personality stuff, guys. And then, okay, so these are my trinkets. Now somebody's going to go next, and we're going to get to know you next week or next month when we have a meeting, right? To build relationships. They're just not doing it. It's the scholar warrior thing.
That I would love to be in the room when you start pulling out trinkets. That would be absolutely incredible. Well, Dave, this has been, I had high hopes for when we would get the opportunity to link back up. And honestly, we have covered, I'm very proud of how this has gone. You have opened up about so many different things in the military, out the military, religion. Before we go, are there any questions or topics that you would like to discuss that I did not ask you about?
Well, I didn't expect for you to open up the ways you did, so I appreciate that. And this is where the Aussie would say, all right, now stop wanking each other off. But this is the process. So um, I'm happy to see that you're in your low 30s, right?
I'm 30, I turned 32 a couple days ago.
Like, there's hope, man. When I just see, and it's not about left, like, you could be a liberal as long as you're willing to speak logically. Okay. And when we say that somebody doesn't have the right to exist, crickets have the right to exist. You can kill them or throw them outside, but everything that's alive has the right to exist. So stop. Like, that's not a discussion. We're on the edge of insanity. And so I'm glad you're doing what you're doing, man. Really. And like I said, the one thing you said that brought a tear to my eye, I appreciate that. So everybody needs to do that.
Well, hey, I hope that this encourages more people to speak out. And something tells me that this is not going to be the last time you're going to appear on this show. I have a feeling that in a year or two, we're going to be right back here with a bunch more topics. Real quick, Dave, before we end this, could you tell the viewers where they can find you, whether it be YouTube, Instagram? If they're like, man, I'm captivated by this guy, I want to learn more, where can they find you at?
Thanks. Yeah, YouTube and Instagram, Christology podcast, and you'll see it come up. And then if you want to look at the orphanage in Sierra Leone that we've been working on for a year and a half, there's a video on that. You can give to them. They need money. There's a way to do it. It's not easy, but Septimus Hamelberg, Septimus Hamelburg, is the pastor there. He is like David. He's, man, all he does his whole life is look out for orphans and hungry people. And it's like, it took me a while to see that he's real, but he is. So that's where I'm at. Yep. Christology podcast for me. And then you can find him on there too.
Well, Dave, hang out real quick when I turn this recording off, but I'd like to say thank you. And this has been awesome. And it's always a pleasure to talk to you.
Thank you. Likewise. God bless you, David.